Hi, my name is Corinna Carbonel, and this is my Veterans PowerPoint presentation. The VA, our veterans, and the struggles that they incur after the return to civilian life is mind-boggling. The statistics are overwhelming, and as I go through this presentation, please remember, these men and women gave their hearts, souls, bodies, and sometimes their lives to your rights and freedoms. Veterans are grappling with access to health care, mental health, substance use, treatment, homelessness, suicide, diversity inclusion, and educational benefits, and the list goes on. The majority of Americans and veterans say that most Americans respect people who have served in the armed forces. With all the obstacles of returning to civilian life, 79% of veterans would still recommend military service to a younger loved one. Pride of having served varies among what era you're asking. 70% of pre-9/11, 58% of post-9/11, and if you're asking all veterans, 68% are all proud that they have served. The ever-changing appearance of America's veterans. The face of veterans in America is changing. According to the Veterans Administration and the Census Bureau, the era of the draft in 1960, veterans made up about 40% of the total population. It has been a declining ever since. In the Gulf War era of the 80s and 90s, veterans made up about 38% of the population and is currently the majority of U.S. veterans. In the early 2000s, that number dropped to around 26%. And in 2018, only 7% of all Americans were U.S. vets. Due to the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, our veteran population is on the rise. As of 2021, our veteran population is still less than 10%. Since the end of the draft in 1973, the number of active duty service members has dramatically declined. In 1968, there were 3.5 million in the armed forces. Until 1980, they did not record the number of men and women separately, and as of that year, there were a little over 2 million service members, 91% men and only 9% women. In 2021, there were 1.4 million service members. 89% were men and just 11% were women. The VA's projected increase by the year 2046, we will have 12.5 million active duty members, women making up 18%. That's an increase from the current 2 million to an estimated 2.2 million women serving our country, while men's enrollment is expected to decline to 72% for a total of 10.3 million. Veterans' racial diversity is also on the rise. As of this year, 74% of veterans are non-Hispanic white. African Americans make up about 13%, and Hispanics make up just 8%. By the year 2046, non-Hispanic whites will fall to 62%. African Americans will roughly stay the same with a slight increase to 15%, while Hispanic veterans will double to 16%. Over the next 25 years, the age of the veteran population is expected to get younger. Veterans under 50 currently make up 72% of all veterans. And in the year 2046, it will grow to 33%. Veterans ages 50 to 69 currently stands at 36% and will shrink to 33%. Veterans over 70 now at 37%, decreasing to a 34% in the coming decades. In a survey done last spring, 65% of all U.S. adults had a favorable view of the VA, while 22% was unfavorable. And in a 2019 Pew survey of veterans, only 9% considered their benefit programs to be excellent. 37% good, 37% fair, and 15% said that it was poor. That has to change. An overwhelming majority, 72% of Americans, said that they would increase spending to the VA's budget for benefits and services if it were up to them. The VA's budget has skyrocketed over the previous 20 years. In 2001, it was just $45 billion. 2011, it was $125 billion. For 2021, it's $243 billion. And the 2022 mandatory funding request totals $152.7 billion, according to military.com, an increase of 10.8% over the current year. Mandatory spending includes compensations, pensions, disability pay, education benefits, and other required expenditures. The proposed budget has a big increase for mental health, homelessness, and suicide prevention. The department requested $598 million for suicide programs alone, nearly double of fiscal 2021, with specific funding for a grant program aimed at prevention, both in outreach and in the media, and an additional $142 million for the Veterans Crisis Hotline. The proposal has a sizable amount going to homeless programs, $2.2 billion, with $486 million specifically to the American Rescue Plan, a program that helps veterans find permanent housing. As an effort to increase diversity, there also included $12.9 million in funding to create a new Office of Resolution Management, which will be responsible for the VA welcoming the inclusion of women, persons of colors, and LGBTQ. The current administration asks of Congress, at what time does the VA come to be adequately funded? Congress now has to come to an agreement on the exact wording of that spending bill. When asking veterans whether the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan or the fight in Syria was worth it, most will resoundingly say no. Concerning Iraq and Afghanistan, 64% of veterans say it was not worth it. For Syria, it's slightly lower at 55% of veterans saying it wasn't worth it. The terrorist attacks on 9/11 was a devastating and traumatic event for Americans. Nearly 20% of our veterans served after that terrible day, and many of them have had a difficult time since leaving the military. Transitioning to civilian life can be difficult for most veterans. especially for those who say they had emotional trauma or distressing experiences. For most veterans, 73% say that they have received benefits from the VA. For every 10,000 vets in the United States, 21 are homeless. In 2010, there were 74,087 homeless vets in America. In 2019, it was just 37,085. That's nearly 50% in the last 10 years. This is due in part to the Housing First initiative and capital spending and programs geared towards veteran housing. Just being a veteran increases the risk of becoming homeless, and being a veteran of color is even more likely due to the organizational injustices in housing and income. COVID-19 is a problem. Sheltered veterans make up primarily two categories: older adults and people with disabilities. Even with the presence of an eviction moratorium, activists have been exposing reports of veterans being evicted. In 2017, the annual homeless report to Congress and National Center for Veterans Analysis and Statistics shows veterans of color make up a large number of homeless vets. Prior to 9/11, 21% of veterans said that the military somewhat or very well prepared them for civilian life. After 9/11, around 50% said that they were prepared. Re-entering civilian life has its challenges, financially, emotionally, and professionally. According to post-9/11 veterans who have not been diagnosed with PTS, most say that serving in the military was an advantage when looking for work. Within 6 months, 35% said they had a job and 21% in less than a year. Roughly 35% say they had trouble paying their bills. 28% said they had to draw unemployment, while 20% said they've had trouble with drugs or alcohol. Veterans who served post 9/11 that have been diagnosed with PTS, about 61% say they had trouble paying their bills. 42% said they've had difficulties getting medical care. Among veterans who looked for work, 57% say they found one in less than 6 months, and an additional 21% say they had a job in less than a year. 41% say they struggled with alcohol or drug abuse. Combat veterans are twice as likely as non-combat veterans to suffer from irritability, anger, stress in their family life, despair, and hopelessness. Combat veterans who experience traumatic events in the military, 69% of pre-9/11 vets and 72% of post-9/11 vets say they suffer from flashbacks, distressing memories, or reoccurring dreams. Our veterans are susceptible to SUDs. When service members leave the military, those restraints leave with them. Substance use and mental health concerns become a greater risk. Deployment is linked with harmful drinking, using drugs, and unsafe behaviors. Lack of confidentiality and mandatory random drug testing deter drug use, but also discourages those who need treatment from seeking it. 50% of active duty personnel report that requesting help for mental health matters would adversely impact their career. More than 10% of veterans have been diagnosed with a substance use disorder, higher than the overall public. Of those who have sought treatment, 50% report problems with marijuana, 65% with alcohol, 10.7% with heroin, and 6% with cocaine. Of veterans who enter a treatment program, 65% report alcohol as the substance they most commonly misuse, twice that of the general population. Veterans with SUDs are more likely to have PTSD or depression. It is projected that between 37 and 50% of Afghanistan and Iraq War veterans have been diagnosed with a mental disorder. Veterans duly diagnosed with PTS and SUD are more likely to have other co-occurring psychiatric and health conditions. According to the Department of Defense, there were 541 confirmed or pending suicide deaths for 2018. The number of suicide deaths in 2019 was 503, and it jumped up to 571 in 2020, which would be an increase of 13.5%. The VA reports that 30% of veteran suicides were led by drug or alcohol consumption, and 20% of veteran deaths were caused by risky behaviors credited to alcohol or substance overdose. Pain was reported as a regular occurrence among polysubstance users. It shows the importance of using more than one approach in pain management. Suicides of veterans receiving high dosages of prescription opioids were twofold and not related to overdose. Almost 70% of veterans with an SUD do not get any sort of treatment. Veterans and SUD is an increasing worry as mounting evidence shows a connection between military service, drug use, and suicide. The VA has reported an increase in veteran substance abuse rates in the last 20 years, but continues to prescribe an overabundance of pain medications. Opioid prescriptions have soared from 17 to 24%, with oxycodone being prescribed most often. Solving veteran substance abuse isn't just about offering treatment, as it is about addressing the related underlying mental health and chronic pain issues that precedes the SUD. Suicide is preventable if help is sought. If you are or know of a veteran who is suffering from an SUD or mental health condition, please reach out. The Veterans Crisis Hotline at 800-273-8255, or you can text to 838-255.